I believe wholeheartedly that way too many people live within their comfort zone. They work kind of hard to get to a certain point and then they get comfortable there because, life is good enough. They're making enough money. They live in a good enough location. They have a good enough relationship, like fill in the blank for all those things. And they're just in their comfort zone and they stay there. And frankly, then they die. And that's their life. Awesome. For me, I've recognized early on that all the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. And if you're not willing to push the envelope and get outside of your comfort zone, you're never going to experience life at its fullest. It's true for every single thing. Why do I get up every single day and go in an infrared sauna at 170 degrees for 30 minutes to sweat my little booty off? Because it's pushing my body. Why do I get out of it and go into my cold plunge that's 40 degrees?
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. I am super fired up today to have the one and only JLD, John Lee Dumas, with me today. John, I just want to start by saying thanks for spending the time with me today.
Brother, I am fired up to be here. I already love your energy. We are going to prepare to ignite together.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Love your energy as well. John is the founder and host of the award-winning podcast, Entrepreneurial on Fire. And this is coming full circle for me because I actually took your free podcast course a little under 3 years ago to get myself started. So this is kind of a cool moment for me, but kind of want to jump right into it. You're coming out with your first traditionally published book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. Right now, it's already available for pre-order and with 5 amazing bonuses at uncommonsuccessbook.com. And I was just telling John how I was watching one of his exclusive podcast interviews within his bonuses, and he has some great bonuses in there as well that just brings more and more value than just the book itself. But I'm sure the book itself is going to bring a ton of value. But the way I want to start today, John, is that you were in ROTC at Providence College, and kind of right away you almost thought about quitting a little bit, but then you made it through, and then you kind of went from station to station, everywhere from Washington, Kentucky, Kansas. And then you did a 13th month tour in Iraq, if I did my research correctly. And that's when things started to become real. That's when people had actual weapons that could fire back at you. And you've described it like every day is like the Super Bowl. You have to wake up consistently disciplined every single day. And so that sounds like such a different, just such a different experience. What does it take to wake up and perform every single day like it's the Super Bowl?
Well, number one, you have done your research, so kudos to you. Number two, brother, it's stressful. It's anxiety. It's like it just weighs on you as an individual. And for 13 months having to do that, it really did kind of build up, a thick skin with me of realizing that, hey, the human body can do a lot more than maybe I thought it was possible of doing. And it honestly set me up for success, later in life. I kind of know I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but a lot of people are like, how could you possibly do 19 interviews in a day, which is what I'm doing today? And I'm like, because I used to spend 19 hours being afraid for my life and getting shot at. And when I put that in perspective and I actually compare and contrast those two things, this is pretty darn easy to be, in my office with my dog, Gus, right there, drinking some water, just hanging out, talking to cool people. Is life really that tough?
Yeah. Do you think it's one of the biggest translators from that period of time to now being able to do 19 interviews? Do you think it's really a mindset thing going into the day to be able to show up like that, like it's the Super Bowl every single day, like you probably still do?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't show up every day like it's a Super Bowl. That's the beauty of what I've done is I call it batching like a baller. So typically, when I'm in non-book promotional mode, I work 5 days a month hard. There's 5 Super Bowl days per month. So I'm not waking up every day like it's a Super Bowl, but 5 of those days of the month I am, where I'm just back-to-back interviews for EO Fire or back-to-back interviews on other shows or back-to-back doing something that's really intensive mind-wise and brain-wise and bandwidth-wise. But then the other 25 days, it's an off day. It's a recharge day. It's a refresh day. I might be doing a couple hours of email. I may be doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I'm really not doing that much for 25 days in the month. But again, for those 5 days, I am all And so that's what's allowed me to keep up the pace that I've kept up since 2012, interviewing over 3,000 entrepreneurs, having over 100 million listens, 1.4 million, monthly average listens. And, now having a business that is generating over $100,000 a month for 90 months in a row. It's because I batch. I pick my battles and I do it. And that's another thing you learn in the Army is like, you want to pick the battles you can win. Like, that's what you want to do. And like, that was my picking of the battles, like picking the days I was going to go all in. This is going to be my Super Bowl. And then still having my refresh days, my recharge days, because those are critical.
Yeah. So to kind of almost keep we're saying Super Bowl, to almost keep a football analogy, sometimes there are teams who get the number one seed going into the playoffs and they have a bye week and then they show up that next game sometimes unprepared because they had a bye week, and sometimes in week 15 or week 16 they don't play their starters, and sometimes the starters can start off the next game that they do play, like playoff game number 1, pretty cold. So that's like one of the things that I thought about. When you take 25 days off or do a minimal work, if you will, do you ever feel like there is almost a little bit of a transition time to getting back in the zone, getting back in the groove?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if you want to stay sharp, you got to do something a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I love doing a daily podcast, because I was doing 30 interviews a month. Like, instead of just doing 4 interviews per month, which all my competitors were doing back in 2012, doing a weekly podcast, like I was putting in the reps. I was getting better every day. I was getting sharper every day. Like, I was making it actually happen. And that was key. And so now, like, when I come back after maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks of not really doing the work, there is some rust there. There is some, kind of like getting over that kind of initial hump. But to be fair, like, I'm not doing 5 days, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, then taking 25 days off. I'm pretty much just doing like one all-in day a week. And so I'm still doing it fairly consistently. But again, even 4 or 5 or 6 days off, like that's a long time too. So there's definitely some initial transition back. A lot of people actually, when I'm like being interviewed, they're like, oh, like I'm like your 20th of 20 interviews today. Like, that's too bad. I'm like, actually, you're the luckiest person, because I am sharper now. I'm more on fire now than I was for episode 1. I was kind of getting warmed up a little bit, like starting that car, like revving the engine. By episode 2, by interview 2 or 3, like I was pretty much good to go. But by episode 20, man, you're getting the best JLD you can possibly get, man. I am all cylinders firing.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad I'm number 18 of 19 then. I got all cylinders firing. So when I was going back into your story, one of the themes that a general theme throughout the course of your life or the course of the last couple of decades has been the varying changes in the environments that you've been in and that you've lived in. So like, after you were in the Army, you went to Guatemala, then you went to India, then you moved to San Diego, you went back to Maine, now you live in Puerto Rico. And I found that really interesting because I know from my experience, I've only moved once, going from like Atlanta to now Nashville. And I've known that changing my environment has provided me with so many things that I wouldn't have otherwise experienced without the change in environment. So with that being said, what do you think the changing of the varying environments that you've been in has provided you that maybe you wouldn't have been able to get if you didn't make all those changes?
So one thing I want to say to that is, I believe wholeheartedly that way too many people live within their comfort zone. They work kind of hard to get to a certain point, and then they get comfortable there because, life is good enough. They're making enough money. They live in a good enough location. They have a good enough relationship, like fill in the blank for all those things. And they're just in their comfort zone and they stay there. And frankly, then they die, and like, that's their life. Like, awesome. For me, I've recognized early on that all the magic happens outside of your comfort zone. And if you're not willing to push the envelope and get outside of your comfort zone, you're never going to experience life at its fullest. I mean, it's true for every single thing. I mean, why do I get up every single day and go in an infrared sauna at 170 degrees for 30 minutes to sweat my little booty off? Because it's pushing my body. Why do I get out of it and go into my cold plunge? That's 40 degrees to push my body, because it makes my body more anti-fragile. It makes my body like more resistant to other stressors because I'm putting it to the test. Why do I lift heavy weights? Who would lift heavy weights? That's not fun. It's not fun at all. but it's because I'm building muscle. I'm breaking down muscle. I'm building it back up. That analogy works for everything else in the world. And that's why I've always wanted to keep life as an adventure, try new things, do new things. Like, how old are you right now?
25.
Yeah. So you're young. I mean, you got time. But I mean, wow. Like, if I was to die saying like I was born wherever you said you were living and then I just made one move to Nashville, I'd be like, that's a pretty sad life. Like, frankly, no matter how well you're able to craft it around. And I know, of course, that's not your life, but I'm just saying, for instance, like, to me, that's been the magic. Like, all my best memories wasn't like, from one place for 7 years that I was there. It was like when I went to Guatemala for 4 months, when I wasn't backpacking India, Nepal for 4 months, like when I, went to Honduras for scuba diving. Like, these are just all things that come to mind right now. And it's like, that's the kind of life that I want to live, always outside of my comfort zone, because frankly, that's where all the magic happens.
Yeah. And I know there's plenty of ways to obviously get yourself out of your comfort zone outside of just like getting up and moving, and you can take a lot of trips and stuff as well. But do you ever see yourself leaving Puerto Rico?
That's going to be a tough one. I will say, I'm 41 years old now. Like, I've kind of had my travel years, which I think are the 20s and 30s. Like, that was fun, and I'm still going to do it. I mean, like, listen, every year that Kate and I have been in Puerto Rico, we've gone out of the country or off the island for at least 75 days, traveling other places. Like, for, again, 6 years in a row, we were like in Europe and Eastern Europe and Asia and, fill in the blank, Fiji. I mean, we were all over the place, like travel. So we still do all those things and have all those adventures and have all that fun, because, that to me is key. But man, I have found it pretty tough to leave Puerto Rico. I mean, it's like, I bought my dream home, got my dog right here. Life is pretty good. And like, I even like to say, even if they took the tax benefits away, I probably wouldn't leave Puerto Rico. Like, I've kind of gotten to the pinnacle, I think, of where my my perfect place to live is, but I'm always still going to want to get out, travel the world, again, not just for like a week. Like, again, when we're gone, we're gone. Like, we did 90 days 2 years ago, like, poof, gone. Like, it was an adventure.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I didn't think I was going to ask you this, but it kind of came to my head when a couple questions ago when you said, "Why do I hop in a sauna and sweat my little booty off?" I feel like part of your brand is a little bit of like silliness and a little bit of goofiness. Like, you introduce your podcast like, boom, shake the room, and there's a lot of instances of that. But I want you to talk about, like, that's probably who you are. Like, that is genuinely you. Like, talk about the importance of recognizing what makes you unique and what makes you special, and amplifying that and using that to your advantage.
It's a really good thing you brought up, and I'm glad that came to you, because really, like, when I first started my podcast, I'd go back and listen to myself. I'm like, man, I don't even resonate with that person. I don't even know who that person is. Cause I was so like robotic, and I was so nervous, and I was so inexperienced, and I was so naive. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just like, that's not me. That's not my personality. That's not really how I sound or how I feel or any of those things. And I'm like, how can I incorporate more of me to make this more fun, to make this more enjoyable? And by the way, to be more authentic and genuine and real and raw. And like, people really want that. They want you, the real, raw, authentic you. And so it didn't come overnight, even after that realization, but I just continued to try to bring more and more of me into the podcast, my real personality into the show, like the deeper I got into it, and like, that was really key. And, honestly, I like to say it was episode 480 before I really was like, okay, that's JLD. Like, that's me. That's who I am. Like, the corny, the funny, the goofy, the joking, not taking life seriously kind of person. Like, that's who I am. And it took a long time for me to be able to feel comfortable enough and to frankly just be good enough to be able to do that with these, top flight entrepreneurs that I really respected. I don't want to just come across as like this goofy, nonchalant, kid, because, I was 32 at the time. And like, to them, a lot of them were in their 50s, 60s and beyond. I was half their age, and I didn't want to come across as like this unprofessional. I was like, I need to be this professional radio person with this radio voice. And at the end of the day, I was wrong. And, I paid for it because my show wasn't as good as it could have been otherwise, but I learned from that. And I really try to bring that forth in everything that I do, whether it's my show or being on other people's shows, or whether I'm on, stage in an event, or I'm doing a webinar, or I'm in WhatsApp, or I'm in, Clubhouse. Doesn't matter. Try to be me.
Yeah. Well, I love it. You definitely do a good job of amplifying it. That's for sure. So one of the things that people who are probably listening right now, if they've never heard your story before, never listened before, they're probably thinking like, okay, this guy was in the Army. This guy also does 19 podcasts in a row, but he also has 25 days where he doesn't really do that much work. He also travels and all this stuff. So you're kind of getting this balance of extreme discipline, but like extreme spontaneity all at the same time. And there's obviously a huge benefit to both. And sometimes people can be all one way and not the best way, and all the other way and not the best way. So talk about like how you balance the two and how you kind of work those into your life.
Well, you kind of nailed it when you just shared that. And for me, I've known this for a long time. I'm all or nothing. I'm literally all in or I'm not in at all. So I'm either literally going to try to be the best at something, or I will be the worst because I'm not even going to try. Like I'm either going to get an A+ in this class or I'm going to get an F. Like I'm either going to be the best person on the sports team or I'm going to be the worst. And that was my attitude when I went into podcasting. I'm like, I'm either going to be the best podcaster possible or I'm not going to do it at all. So like when I went into it, I'm like, well, of course I'm going to do a daily show because how am I going to become the best if I don't do it every single day and I don't put in the reps to actually get better? So it was just like a no-brainer for me to go all in or not. Like a lot of people might be surprised, but like I can be really lazy, like intentionally. Like that's part of my personality. It's like I have no problem on my off days sitting by the pool, like playing a video game or reading a book, like a fiction book, and like not really progressing necessarily in business or in wealth for like days on ends. But then like when it's time to like wake up this morning and say, I have 19 interviews today, I'm going to crush 19 interviews today. And I did. Like I'm at crushing 18, I'm going to crush 19 and then I'm done, and like, boom, I'm all or nothing. And I don't think everybody needs to be like that. Obviously everybody's not like that, but that's me. So I use it to my strength. I know that's my attitude. I know that I couldn't wake up every day and do one episode. Like they would end up, there'd be days where there'd be crappy episodes because I wouldn't be all in like mentally. But like when I have one day to do 8 interviews for my show, I'm all in and every one I crush.
And I doubt that you feel regret around anything behind that because you probably see if something went wrong, you probably learned from it and moved on. But has there ever been a time where you feel like going all in on something has served you in a negative way?
Not yet. I think at some point in my life it will, but not yet.
All right. I love it. I love it. So obviously you've interviewed thousands and thousands of successful entrepreneurs and just different people in general. Is there a most important question that you've like continually asked time after time that you feel like has been like revealed the most to you?
What is your worst entrepreneurial moments? Like uncovering that story from so many people. I actually asked that question 2,000 days in a row. That question learned a lot. I learned a lot from because I really learned like the raw behind the scenes realness. And there's so many lessons to take away from people's worst, lowest struggle, entrepreneurial moments. I didn't want their worst life moment. Like I didn't want to hear about the time that maybe, like their kid got hit by a car. That wasn't my question. It was, right. What was your worst entrepreneurial moment, like business side of things? And man, is that revealing? And it's helped me a lot. I've probably avoided a lot of potential disasters because I've learned from so many people's mistakes. And, it's something that I really, keep close to my heart and brain.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm sure it reveals a lot of different things to you. So one of the things that I've heard you talk about before is the phrase backwards planning. and that's something that you kind of learned probably originally in the Army. And it's kind of the same idea of reverse engineering, like coming up kind of beginning with the end in mind. Like that's what in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about, that beginning with the end in mind. And it's the approach that you took to writing your book. Like, what does chapter 17 look like? Okay, that's what 17 probably is. What's 16? What's 15? And reverse engineering or backwards planning from there. I want you to just talk about kind of the importance that has played into your life and the different things that you kind of use that for.
That's exactly where I got it from. I mean, backwards planning is in the military. It's such a big part of what you do, because you're like, okay, this is what mission accomplished looks like. Now, how do we get there? Well, let's take one step back from mission accomplished. Where are you? Okay, well, then take one step back from there. Where are you? And before you do it, you get to where you currently are. Or I said, before you know it, you get to where you currently are. And it's like, oh, well, then those are the steps forward you need to take to get the mission accomplished. And that's exactly what it came with this book. It was like, I wanted to know what the common path that all these successful entrepreneurs have trod upon to get to their version of uncommon success. So I boiled down all the commonalities, and there were 17 core foundational principles that all the entrepreneurs shared. And I looked down and I said, this is a path. Let's start at the ends and let's work backwards. Like, the end is uncommon success. Okay, boom. What's 16, 15, 14? And before I knew it, I had this chronological, step-by-step, 17-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. I had the roadmap to your version of uncommon success. Now, I just had to sit down and write the thing. And speaking of writing the thing, by the way, like 2020 was my quarantine year, like most people. And I sat down for 8 months, 2 hours every day. My first 2 hours were dedicated to nothing else but writing this book. And it took me 480 hours of writing to expound upon these 17 steps into the full explanation and detailed results that they are now in this book. And it's 71,000 words. It's 273 pages. Like, this was work getting like what I knew from my own journey, but more importantly, from the 3,000 successful entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, and how I downloaded that into these 17 steps, put them into chronological order, and then put them into this book, step by step by step. And it all started with the backwards planning.
I love it. I love it. You went all in. You went all in once again. I love it. Well, before I ask the last question, John, I want to acknowledge you, because you're so open about like your business and wanting to just provide more and more value and support for others. And obviously I experienced it with my free podcast course. I mean, you put your freaking income report out online and you do so much to support other people. And I think it's more than most people are willing to do themselves. And a lot of the things that aren't things that you get paid for. And then for your ability to put your heart and soul and commitment and discipline 2 hours a day over this long period of time to put this book together, to be able to provide so much value to people with your amazing bonuses and all this stuff for the small price that a book is. It's just super cool, man.
Well, thank you very much. It was honestly the book I knew I had to write, because I essentially get the same 10 questions from my audience over and over and over again. And I can't take the time to these hundreds of emails every day, week, month to respond individually. It's just not possible. But what I can do is write the book that has the answers to all of their questions. And it wasn't easy, but now that I've done it, like, I'm so glad that I have this book that I can gift to them and say, this is the answer to your questions. Enjoy.
I love it. I love it. Well, I know so many people are going to get to order it right now. Just go to uncommonsuccessbook.com, guys. It's freaking awesome. And he has, like I said, amazing bonuses in there, interviews with him, interviews with some of his guests, and some more stuff to come.
Have you gotten your journals, by the way?
Not yet. I was actually, I put it in. I think it probably should be here pretty soon. So I'm looking forward. Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting those
awesome bonuses. I am literally shipping to your door all 3 of my bonuses, all 3 of my journals, the Freedom Journal, the Mastery Journal, the Podcast Journal. They are 3 amazing journals on my own expense, on my own dime. I'm shipping to your door for a single pre-order. Although I know that, Chris is actually obviously going to go and, pre-order, probably 10 more for his audience right now and really make things happen. So just want to say, I'm honored to be on the show right now. I mean, I think you're doing some really good things here, and it's really cool to see that, you're down in Nashville making things happen. And, for me, like being able to share this book with everybody and, being able to see that, you are, here supporting and doing what you're doing with your audience is just so exciting. So just visit uncommonsuccessbook.com. Keep listening to Nick's podcast, obviously, but, come listen to my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, as well. Make both of us one of the 7 podcasts that you listen to. Order this book, get all the bonuses. All these bonuses disappear on March 23rd. So pre-order, make it happen. And Nick, I just want to say thank you, brother, for having me on the show. Much appreciated. I don't take it lightly.
Yeah, man. No doubt. No doubt. Well, y'all go make sure you follow him at John Lee Dumas on socials. Last question, John. I think that getting closer to the best version of yourself is both a constant journey and a unique journey. I think the way that I get closer to the best version of myself is going to be a little bit different than the way that you get closer to the best version of yourself. So last question for you personally. If you could currently do or work on 3 things to get closer to the best John Lee Dumas, the best JLD that there could possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
I'd work on my productivity, which would be producing the right content. I work on my discipline, actually having a plan of action every day and being a disciple to that plan of action. And I would work on my focus, making sure that I'm always following one course until success.
Boom. Awesome 3. Awesome 3. John, well, I really appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, brother. Much appreciated.
Have a good 19th.